Everyone. It was July 2014. I had the broadest smile on my face as I sat at my office desk and read through my SBI Youth for India Fellowship acceptance letter. At that moment, I didn't know that my life was going to change completely. I am Priyavrat, SBI Wi-Fi batch of 2014, and currently the program coordinator, SBI Wi-Fi Fellowship Program. SBI's Youth for India Fellowship is a 13-month immersive rural development program where selected candidates are placed with partner organizations of high repute to identify a real grassroots problem, envision a collective solution, design it and implement it to address the problem in a sustainable fashion. We are not alone. A large chunk of young Indian graduates is now attracted to making careers in the social development sector, but often shut their thought out due to lack of orientation, opportunities, and mentorship. Acknowledging this gap is what gave birth to the Youth for India Conclave. The Youth Conclave shall focus on giving our youth an insight into working in the development sector and reasons to stay motivated amid harsh realities that one faces while working in this sector. Also, we are honored to have with us representatives from national and international development organizations, social enterprises, CSRs, corporates, and young minds eager to apply themselves to the development sector. Thank you all for taking time out from your busy schedules and being with us today. Now, I would like to request Managing Director, SBI Foundation, Madam Manjula Kalyana Sundaram, to present her welcome address and formally open the event. Madam, please.
Yeah, thank you, Priyavrat, and good morning to all of you, and hearty welcome to the YFI Conclave, which is held every year annually. And every year we hold the YFI Conclave on the second Sunday of March. And over the years, this has gained so much momentum with 350 plus alumni and 100 fellows on the ground. I'm so happy and glad that all of you have taken the time out on a weekend, on a Sunday, to be with us and share and enjoy and go. Am I okay, please? Yeah. Okay. And go and learn peer learning in the conclave today. And it's also my proud privilege to welcome our chairman, Sri Dinesh Khara, for this event. Our chairman has been always supportive of our YFI program and all of the programs of State Bank of India Foundation, and he never loses an opportunity to interact with our fellows and motivate them. The fellowship was started in the year 2011. That means that today we are completing 10 years of this journey. 10 years where the youth have engaged with us and found a calling for themselves. I'm so happy that over 70% of our fellows continue to remain in the social sector today, and State Bank of India has contributed immensely to this sector. The purpose for which the program was started was for providing the social sector with a human resources talent, and also to help the youth find a calling in their profession, and also to ensure that India grows equitably and the urban educated youth contribute meaningfully to the growth of the nation. This is where the empowering of the youth comes to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. I am so happy that our YFI Fellowship contributes towards 12, 10 to 11 SDGs and SDG 13. We work in 12 thematic areas, and the fellows have the freedom to choose in whichever area they want to do. And we partner with some amazing NGOs in this journey. The fellows are mentored by domain experts in the fellowship as well as in the NGO. At the end of the 13th month, they are so happy to be to continue in the sector as well as continue to engage with us. So today's program is a formal way in which we try to engage with our fellows. I wish all of you the very best in today's program and hope that you go back today with a lot of learning. We have an interesting array of programs curated for you, and I hope all of you take the best benefit of it. Our respected chairman has taken the time out today in his busy schedule. I know he was traveling even yesterday, and he wanted to join us from on the way, just to stay here and motivate all of you. I'm so happy, sir, and grateful that you could join us today. And I request you to please address our fellows with your motivating speech. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Manjula. I think it's a proud privilege to be associated with the Youth for India Conclave. It's an annual event, which you just mentioned, but it is more important in the today's context because it is completing 10 years. 10 years is not a small time. So I think it's a very memorable event for this Youth for India program, which got initiated under the sponsorship of State Bank of India. I'm told Mr. Amitabh Kanji was supposed to have joined, but he has been requested for an urgent meeting in the PMO. He might join if at all he would find the time. But nevertheless, my very warm welcome to Mr. Amitabh, to Mr. Khan. This also speaks about his commitment for the purpose and the objective which is intended to be achieved by this foundation. Excuse me. There's Manjula Kalyan Sundaram, of course, is steering SBI Foundation. So I think it's under her leadership, this program will continue going forward. Esteemed guests, past and as well as the current fellows of Youth for India program. I'm actually very pleased to join this SBI Youth for India Conclave 2021. Our founding father made a statement, you must be the change you want to see in the world. And actually much before the advent of the Corporate Social Responsibility Act, which came into existence in 2007-8, this was a statement made by our founding father. And also the bank also conceived this idea of designing a program which will help us in tapping the potential of young India for the improvement of the underdeveloped rural regions. It was felt that probably volunteering would be a better idea if at all we have to really make a change in the rural landscape. And with that in mind, we thought that we must reach out to all those who matter, which means that people who are willing to work in an area which is beyond their comfort zone, people who have passion, and we thought that such kind of people we can possibly locate in the premier institutions of the country, with IIMs and IITs, and also the leading corporate groups like Tata's, etc. So with that in mind, we reached out to all such entities and institutions, and was happy to see that we could get the sponsorship or maybe the commitment of 27 young fellows in the year 2011. Apart from that, how really to make it happen? Because these youths, will by itself will not be in a position to make any headway. So we also decided that we should engage with some NGOs who have got the acceptability and the credibility and who have understood how to really navigate these kind of tough and the rough weather. So we started this program way back in 2011 with the help of 3 NGOs, which I would be very proud to share. It was the first one was the MS Swaminathan Foundation. The other one was Seva Mandir in Rajasthan and BAF Development Research Foundation. So I happened to be associated with the valedictory program of the first such program, which was there in 2011. Incidentally, I was posted in Chennai and I was very much there. And I'm happy to share, a very large number of such pass outs of this fellowship program decided to stay on into the social sector and have contributed for the growth of the social sector. So I think it was not merely an effort made by these youth to experience what this life is and what the change could really bring into into these into the interior of the country. But I think they could have the sustainable interest, and that is the only reason why they would have continued or may have chosen to pursue this path. Let me share with you the first batch of 27 who came in. They had actually quit their very well-paying jobs also, and also they were the one who were probably working with the who's who of the country and the world, and despite that they chose to tread this particular path. So that itself is a very clear reflection the kind of interest which this program could generate, and also their mentoring which could be achieved with these 3 NGOs who had actually helped them and supported them in their effort for achieving something meaningful. And I think it is something which is very tangible. And I think for a country like ours, where we have to ensure that the social equity is maintained, and also we have to galvanize the energy and the resources of our rural India, I think this program has a huge potential to really take this country to a very developmental path, which would be unique by itself. And I think the Youth for India fellowships and also the participants of this Youth for India fellowship are the one who will actually be paving the way for converting the landscape of this country, which will be actually leading the energy and the resources which are there in the upcountry locations. They will be channelized for the development of this country. And also, I must say that, over all these years, about Manjula had mentioned that about 350 fellows are there, and almost about 70% of these fellows have continued to work in the rural sector and in the developmental sector. I think it's a very clear reflection about the kind of value creation which this program has done. I'm happy to share with all of you that some of the fellows have also chosen to opt for higher education after completing this fellowship, and have also pursued some of the very, very prestigious program like the PM Rural Development Fellowship, etc. So actually, Youth for India has given them a very sound foundation, and have also given them a sort of a better understanding of the ecosystem in which these fellows can actually work and contribute for the development of the country. We at State Bank of India continues to serve this segment of society by reaching out to the rural parts of the country. We very well understand their needs, and also we value their wisdom and understand their daily lives. From that point of view, I think when it comes to an institution which has got a reach and which has got a better understanding, none could have been better than State Bank of India. We in State Bank of India has got a vision of service beyond banking. And this particular responsibility of our vision is taken care of by SBI Foundation, a non-profit organization which we had created a couple of years back. It's a Section 25 organization, and it is directing all its efforts to do justice to the vision in a number of ways. It's not only the motto, it has also adopted the bank's values and helped them to penetrate all the way to the last mile by adopting programs that aim for the holistic development. SBI Youth for India has been fueling and curating on-ground success stories that not only helps in attracting the younger talent, but also gives many more the motivation of really pursuing this path. It is a 13-month program, but normally what we have observed is that this 13-month program leads to transformation of lives of many of these youth, which actually has made this foundation very, very vibrant. And we are actually very proud of its achievement. And also, I must acknowledge that many of the luminaries, when they get to know the kind of work being done by the youth in the upcountry location, it's a very, very impressive performance of these youth, which has led to channelizing the energy and the resources of the rural India. The SBI Fellowship Program is actually a bridge between what is intended to be the Sabka Vikas. So if at all we have to achieve the Sabka Vikas, I believe that such kind of fellowship program have a long way to go. I think it may not be out of place to mention that even Niti Aayog in one of their report in 2017 has mentioned that despite the rise of urbanization, more than half of India's population will continue to live in rural India. So which very clearly means that the importance of the development of the rural economy and also channelizing the energy of rural India needs to be undertaken on a priority. And I'm happy that our Youth for India program is going strong, and I'm sure they will continue to ensure that we're in a position to channelize the energy and the resources of rural India, and it will actually help in creating a very holistic development path for our motherland India. I'm happy that many such senior fellows have come in, and I'm sure they will be sharing their experience during the course of the day. And it's actually it's worth narrating to say that they are still pursuing their dreams and are having even higher targets for the rural India to really develop. And it's not merely to develop, but also for the communities to change and communities to really visualize the value which they can create for the country. I think it is some kind of awareness which needs to be created, and the Youth for India fellows are actually the change agent, and they are bringing in the change which is required. I also believe that this fellowship has opened an avenue for the younger generation to work for the benefit of our country, which at times it is felt that the one who are who have got so much of resources, so much of energy, so much of strength, they may not be willing to undertake these kind of roles. But I'm happy to share that the kind of response which we are getting in the fellowship, it's a very clear, it's a very heartening response which we are getting, and we are actually reassured that there are going to be many more change agents going forward. So we at State Bank of India through our SBI Foundation are here to support all of you to make sure that you carry on your dreams, you carry on your dreams for changing India, you carry on your dreams for becoming the change agents. You also carry on your dreams of making this India a very different India as compared to the models being talked about by the West. This will be a new model which will be created and curated by all of you. So with these words, my best wishes to the Youth for India Conclave today. More so, it is completing 10 years. I wish Youth for India should have many more such 10 years celebrations going forward. With these words, my best wishes and compliments to all the participants. I wish the deliberations today turn out to be very, very useful. And of course, it will pave the way for the future programs to really get designed. Thank you very much. All the very best.
Thank you, respected Chairman, sir, for sharing your valuable insights. It was really a delight to listen to the story behind the inception of the fellowship program and the way the SBI Foundation and SBI is supporting it. Thank you for always being there, sir, to motivate and guide the fellows. Now I would like to call upon one of the most energetic members of the SBI family. His perennial marathon runs, his constant encouragement, and his dynamic presence makes him a huge inspiration and a role model to many of us today. Shri Nixon Joseph, President and COO, SBI Foundation. I request you to please address the gathering, sir. Thank you. Sir, please unmute yourself.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of SBI Foundation and SBI Youth for India alumni, I express our sincere thanks to respected Chairman Dinesh Kumar Kharaji for having found time from his hectic schedule and addressed our alumni. Sir, your presence here has taken the conclave to a higher level. Your presence as the head of the bank, which is marching towards a carbon neutral bank by 2030 and aligning all business strategies along with the sustainable development goals, gives a powerful message to all the alumni and also the current fellows to do their best during this decade of action. I'm sure that your motivating words have given a powerful message to all our fellows and alumni, and also would further drive their passion to make a difference in the lives of everyone. Thank you, sir, once again for finding time and addressing our fellows. And finally, I thank all the alumni who are attending this program from various parts of the world. As they meet together, as all of you meet together and deliberate on youth and social sector challenges, SBI Foundation is extremely proud that we have mentored a group of youths who have established themselves as successful individuals in almost every field of their lives and contributing in one way or the other to address India's developmental challenges, aligning its sustainable development goals, and also contributing in their own way to an Atmanirbhar Bharat. We could not be any prouder. Our alumni come from a variety of backgrounds, but their commitment to positively impacting communities and making a difference in the lives of others is what unites them all. At this moment, when all of you have come for this alumni meet, I once again thank you for what you have done for the society, for bringing change in the lives of the marginalized. Thank you all for attending this inaugural address.
Thank you, Nixon, sir, for sharing your address and also giving us hope that this movement will continue in the times to come. Thank you, Dinesh Kharaji, respected Chairman, sir, for being with us today. And now we will move on after a break of 2 minutes to the next session.
So I thank all the panelists for joining us for this panel discussion. And before we move to the specifics of this discussion, I would also like to take this opportunity to introduce all the panelists to the audience that have joined us. So I would like to start with Srimati Manjula Sundaram, who is the MD of SBI Foundation. Previously, she was EVP, Chief of HR and Management Services at SBI Life. With a master's degree in economics and also a certified associate of the Indian Institute of Bankers, she brings over 3 decades of experience in the banking sector. She has taken up important assignments in the bank, such as Deputy General Manager, Personal Banking of Patna Circle, and also as the Vice President of Personal Banking and Admin in the Hong Kong branch. During her various engagements, she has championed multiple strategic businesses and HR initiatives. We are happy to have you here, ma'am. Thank you for joining us. Shri Deepak Dwivedi ji is the chairman and chief editor of Dainik Bhaskar Group. With over 3 decades in media with leading newspapers, Shri Deepak Dwivedi ji started his journalism career with Blitz, a leading weekly tabloid with a focus on investigative journalism. He worked closely with the founder Rustom Khurshedji Karanjia, respected Indian journalist and editor who typically signed his reports as R.K. Karanjia. He has been engaging with grassroots journalists for socioeconomic development, and some of his key achievements include over 3 decades of active journalism. He is the chairman of the board and chief editor of Dainik Bhaskar Group. Shri Deepak Dwivedi ji also serves on the CSR Advisory Board of Action Aid Association. He is a United Nations PRME member and is on the Academic Council of the United Nations System as an expert member on poverty and human rights in Central and South Asia. Thank you, sir, for joining us. We also have with us Professor Rukaya Joshi. She is a former professor and chairperson of Center for Education in Social Sector from SP Jain Institute of Management and Research. As a chairperson of the postgraduate program in development management, she conceptualized, developed the architecture, and ran the program till it got accredited by AMBA, one of the top 3 global institutions in accreditation of management education. She has published and presented a number of papers in international journals and is undertaking research in collaboration with UCL London in India. Presently, she is undertaking direct implementation of socially relevant projects, mentoring a large number of NGO and CSR projects. Over the last 3 decades, she has also led many community-based NGO activities, as well as she is on the boards of multiple NGOs. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us.
Thank you for inviting.
We have with us Dr. Badrish Singh Mehra, who is the Executive Director of Chirag. And Chirag also happens to be one of our partner NGOs of the SBI Youth for India Fellowship Program. Badrish ji has a doctorate in wildlife sciences from Saurashtra University and has over 20 years of work experience in sectors in regions such as the Philippines, Northern Ireland, and with the university structure in Papua New Guinea. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you.
We also have with us Shubhajit Pen. He graduated in economics from Presidency College, Kolkata, and went on to pursue his MBA from the Indian Institute of Management, Lucknow, in marketing, like many of his peers. After a stint at IBM, Shubhajit took up the SBI Youth for India Fellowship in 2011 and worked with MS Swaminathan Research Foundation during his fellowship in Wardha, Maharashtra. He was also the program manager for SBI Youth for India and has played an instrumental role in shaping this platform like many of our other alumni. He is currently heading the education vertical of Barefoot College International. Thank you for joining us, Shubhajit. And for the last introduction, we have Anirudh Prasad, who is the moderator for this session. He pursued the Youth for India Fellowship in the year 2014-15 with MS Swaminathan Research Foundation, post which he went on to work in the CSR management space, and currently he has co-founded a consultancy aimed at improving the effectiveness of social sector programs called REACH. Thank you, Anirudh, for joining us, and I would now request you to take over for the panel discussion.
Thank you, Alex, for the wonderful introductions of everybody. I'd once again like to thank our panelists for taking time out today to kind of spend some time with us and educate us with your experience and your learning, especially on the topic that we have at hand, which is encouraging youth to achieve the social development, sustainable development goals. I'd also like to kind of contextualize the topic for our audience before we start. And I'd like to kind of bring to everybody's attention the fact that the government of India has a national youth policy, which was first made in 2014, which kind of puts forward the vision that the government of India has to not only empower our youth to achieve their potential, but through them kind of enable India to find its rightful place in the community of nations. And in 2017, through engineering the national policy, action plans were developed to kind of meet the objectives across 11 priority areas, which again has a very strong connection to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, where the focus is that youth clubs and the large volunteer force that is available within the youth development agencies in our country kind of play a pivotal role in helping us achieve the objectives that have been set out in the policy. So with this in mind, and with the topic that we have in hand, my first question kind of goes to Manjula ma'am. Hello, ma'am. So like we all know, the importance that has been placed on youth to achieve our social objectives, like the policy states, and the fact that SBI Youth for India Fellowship is a youth-based fellowship, as the name suggests. Can you please tell us the work that the SBI Foundation does, especially its engagement with youth and the role that they play with the organization? And I would appreciate if you could highlight why youth engagement is important and any lessons that you have from this experience that could be important for the space to learn from.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Anirudh. I would like to start off by what we do at SBI Foundation itself. As you all know, and today's event is for the Youth for India flagship program. This program is even older than SBI Foundation. It was conceived by a team at SBI and started in the year 2011. Like all of you heard that this is the 10th year. And in 2015, the SBI Foundation was set up to give a strategic orientation to the CSR funding. Instead of just doing a one-off CSR donations, the bank thought we should do more strategic projects. So the SBI Foundation was set up in 2015. And the Youth for India program got transferred to SBI Foundation to manage and take it forward and scale it up to even greater heights. As you know, this is one of our most prestigious projects, and I would always keep telling Priyavrat, the coordinator, that this is the most glamorous flagship project of SBI Foundation. We also have other projects like our Gram Seva project, which is the adoption of villages. So far, we have adopted about 75 villages spread over 11 states in India. And we go deep into the village and we work along with the grassroots panchayats, the grassroots NGO, and involve the panchayats in all the decisions. And here, like why I'm bringing this across is the involvement of youth is very important in the Gram Seva program itself. The youth are encouraged in the education as well as in all of the initiatives in volunteerism to bring change in their village and change of mindset and improvement in their own livelihoods. And we conduct a lot of livelihood programs, skilling programs for the youth, and also for the women there, the girls there, that they are empowered. Another program we run is the Center of Excellence for people with disabilities. And this also is a center where we champion and enable the PWDs working in public sector banks and various other organizations to integrate themselves within the organization with the skill sets that they have. We also have running a very good and a program that we are proud of along with Microsoft India for enabling disabled youth for creating pathways for their employment in the BFSI sector. So these are youth differently abled, and we are creating, training them for jobs available in this sector. And we are, other than this, we the health program also we run, and we also are deeply engaged in several education programs. Education not just in the primary sector, but also in the high school and middle school sector. So across SBI Foundation, all our programs, the youth play a major role in our target beneficiaries. And coming to your question, why is it important, and how is it that we can partner and allow the youth to achieve their SDGs, right? Let me make it a little more interactive. Anirudh, when you're talking of youth, what comes to your mind?
Well, I recently came across the definition as 15 to 29, and I feel like I'm not a youth anymore. But like Professor Joshi reminded me, it's a state of mind.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, when I look at the statistics, it's 1 in every 4 people in India. So it's basically every second person that you end up meeting ends up being a youth. So for me, it's basically the crux of who we are going to be in the future. So when I think of youth in the next 20, 30 years, especially the younger generation who are going to lead us.
Yes. Yes. And what are the qualities which you would ascribe to a youth?
Now that's a long conversation. I feel like there's so many points, but
one words.
For me, it's the way in which they see the world, which is not just for themselves, but also the plans that they have for the future, which is very different to the way that at least my generation has been brought up.
Yeah, and we have another youngster here, Shivaji. What do you think when you think of a youth?
I think possibilities, I think aspirations, somewhat which Anirudh talked about, different way of thinking innovatively. So yes, out of the tradition.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm sure all the other senior panelists here with me, we all, when we say youth, we think people with a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, innovativeness, and a zeal and a passion to change the world. They are not people who accept the status quo. They will not say, okay, this is what my parents did, this is what the grandparents did, and so that is what we are going to do. No. I mean, we've all also been young ones. We've been also in the youth. We can relate very well to what you are going through now. So this is the energy that we want to channel us. The energy of the youth, the exuberance, and the zeal not to accept the world as it is. And they, like Shivajit said, they are the inheritors of the world. Right? So you don't want to have a world which is not to your liking. So you want to change the world. You don't want inequities in the world, and you want to change that and see that we are going into a better world, not just a country, but also a world. Right? Yeah. So to this respect, when we think of our own Youth for India program that we have, so this is a program which channelizes all these energies into one single program. Like Rukayaji was sharing even before we started, that she says every little thing has been thought of and well put together. Right? So even I'm amazed when I came to this SBI Foundation, and I found that, every little thing of the program has been well thought out. And over the years, like Shivajit and all the others have contributed and made the program even more interesting. And we are so happy that today it is one of the well sort of program, because we not only allow the fellows to go and try and make a change, we allow them to use their own skills, choose their own area. We do not tell them that this is the area that you're going to work in, and we ask them to choose their area according to their own skill set and their passions. So this is
a good point.
Yeah. So this is what this is the learning that we have had in the Youth for India program. That if you are able to allow the youth to choose what they have and what they would like to work in, to apply themselves and give them the freedom to make the changes that they want to, and they will definitely carry it forward. And because this is a set of youth who are passionate about they want to bring in to the society. So this is the great learning which I would like to pass on for other organizations if they are thinking of such programs, that you just allow them to follow their heart. Yes, we are there. The entire team is there to guide them, because sometimes this is also learning. Sometimes they get carried
away. And on that note, ma'am, I'd like to kind of bring in Mr. Badrish Mehra's experience as running an NGO. And sir, volunteering has always been a good relationship between NGOs and volunteers has always existed. And it's like an important tenet of how an NGO operates. And considering that now we have a national policy which is kind of focusing on volunteerism as an important medium, NGOs have always shaped and nurtured and taken care of our youth leaders. So now, if volunteerism is an important medium, what support do you think NGOs need to better shoulder this responsibility so that we benefit a larger audience of volunteers, if I can put it that way?
Thank you, Anirudh. Basically, means the first thing which comes to my mind with relations to volunteerism, I would say, is value, because volunteerism brings a lot of commitment and to the sites and to the field. And to look at it means, I would say, when we see volunteers, we would think in terms of commitment, because once you want to volunteer, the first thing individual thinks is he's committing his time and moving into a different sector. Second thing which comes to mind is that they should have compassion, because we are working with the community as a NGO sitting in the Himalayas, in the remote areas, and working with the communities. We feel the compassion is a major component for a volunteer, which has to be there. And there has to be some kind of capacity in terms of skill, which they bring in to the organization. And means before answering your question directly, what NGOs need, I don't want to come to a wish list what all NGOs need, but what we need is some kind of commitment, compassion in the volunteers, and some sort of capacity, which adds so much value. And when we are talking about youth, it also brings in a lot of energy, and that is positive energy. When the volunteer comes to us, they have a lot of aspirations, and some come with very romantic views. Within some time, means when they face the realities, initially it is good, you are in the Himalayas, you are looking at the ranges, means cooler climate, I'm still wearing a jacket here. So people think it is very nice. For some time it is. And then once you get into the grind of things, understanding the communities, how the life is, the hardship, bringing water itself means engage somewhere around 4 hours of work for people here, and especially the women. So I would also like to highlight that through the SBI fellowship, means it has brought so much value. And it has not only identified the male volunteers, but a lot of female volunteers. So that energy has come in, the interaction has happened. And from our end, I think what we need to do with the volunteers is first make them comfortable, to connect them with the communities, the right kind of connect, which is very important, and to groom their capacity to work in the rural or development sector. Like Priyavaji was saying, like a lot of earlier fellows have continued in the development sector, which is a very positive. And like Manjula ji is saying, that it is a very well conceived program. And means I was laying emphasis on the processes and structures. And this is a program which brings in so much value, identifying the right people and the right fit, which was very important. So means as an NGO, I think it's also a learning for us how smooth structures and processes support the volunteerism and means the fellows' life, as well as the win-win situation for the NGO as well as for the volunteer. Because we have got a lot of programs on the ground, hands-on experience, the conceptual ideas of the fellows now get converted into realities, they contribute, and the feel good. Means thing is, in the NGO sector, what we give is basically just an allowance, you can say, or wages to live, not the market wages. So it's a very competitive thing. Means the value is not on money, but on giving and sharing. So I believe volunteerism is all about learning, giving, and sharing. And that's what means as an NGO, what we like in this program. And I think this is a learning experience, a network, and NGO, what we get is connecting to the large network. If we try to explore for volunteers, it would be difficult. The appreciation of SBI is that they do that job do it very well, put in the right people and connect so that both benefit. The NGO is benefiting. Many times people see volunteerism or the volunteers or the fellows as cheap labor, but we don't. We see a lot of value in it. Means they bring in much more enthusiasm. And with organizations, NGOs, which are like, we are there now for 34 years, a lot of our old staff is getting old. It also brings in so much positive and new energy, the new innovations. It gives them the freedom to test, try out things which they were not able to do it in regular jobs. That kind of freedom these programs bring in. So when these experiments are there in past, we have seen a lot of fellows, the experiments they have done, we have taken it forward and are continuing with those programs. Now they are becoming more and more, like we work largely as a Central Himalayan Rural Action Group. We work largely on natural resource management, on which like forestry is the main program. Then water spring rejuvenation is the major component. Then livelihood, education, and health. So they bring in so much new dimensions to it that we can take it forward, prepare for the times to come, and also because the community's requirement and their aspirations are also changing. So we have to keep pace with the development, and the fellows bring in that value.
Sure.
So that is what I think what means an NGO needs, to answer your question.
Sure. And if I could, if Mr. Deepak is free, I could ask him a question now, or should I wait? Hi, Mr. Deepak. Apologies for making you wait. I noticed that you're busy as well. Sir, with your experience, you've been somebody who's seen things from the media and the journalistic side, and you also have your experience as part of it being consulting for a lot of NGOs. I want to ask you and bring you in terms of youth engagement. Like Manjula Madam said and Badri sir said, engaging youth is extremely important. And in today's world of social media, where youth engagement on a lot of topics is often kind of divisive, has minimum attention spans, what role do you see what role do you see traditional media houses playing in kind of engaging youth on a national objective, especially organizations like Better India, ADR, who have very different ways of communicating with our youth? So how would you kind of place this entire ecosystem where media is interacting with our youth?
देखिए, सबसे पहले तो मैं ये कहना चाहूंगा SBI फाउंडेशन पूरे देश में एक ऐसा यूनिक एक सोशल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी का एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है जो पहले नंबर पे देश में ऐसा कुछ काम कर रहा है जो ग्रामीण भारत तक पहुंच रहा है। और इसमें SBI के चेयरमैन, उसके CEO निक्सन साहब, मंजुला मैडम जैसे मैं बहुत सारे प्रोमिनेंट लोगों को देख रहा हूं, प्रोफेसर रुकैया जोशी, सारे लोगों से लोग सालों भर इसकी विचार विमर्श करते हुए और ग्राम सेवा तक ये पहुंचे। ये देश का पहला ऐसा ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है जो सही मायने में ग्राम सेवा तक पहुंचा है और गांव की तरक्की के लिए काम कर रहा है। और जब हम लोगों ने आपने मीडिया के रोल की बात की, तो मीडिया का जो भी परसेप्शन रहा है कि ये 2.5 लाख से ज्यादा स्टेट बैंक ऑफ इंडिया के कर्मचारी, अधिकारी, और इसकी लगभग 24,000 से ज्यादा देश में शाखाएं, जिसमें से 35% लगभग रूरल एंड सेमी अर्बन एरियाज में है। ये इतना बड़ा काम कर रहे हैं कि जो गवर्नमेंट की मशीनरी भी इस समय नहीं कर पा रही है। हम लोग देख रहे हैं कि एजुकेशन, हेल्थ, इन्वायरमेंट, वाटर, सैनिटेशन, ये जो स्कीम्स हैं डिस्ट्रिक्ट एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन इंप्लीमेंट कराने के लिए लगा है, लेकिन हम देश के 7.5 लाख गांवों तक कैसे पहुंचाएं इसको, ये हमारे देश में सबसे बड़ा चैलेंज है। लेकिन SBI एक ऐसा देश में ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है कि जो 7.5 लाख लोगों तक, गांव तक अपने फाइनेंशियल ट्रांजैक्शन को पहुंचाता है। तो आज की तारीख में मेरा ऑब्जर्वेशन, मेरा एक सुझाव ये कि SBI फाउंडेशन 7.5 लाख गांव तक अपनी प्रेजेंस जो सेल्फ डेवलपमेंट, दे विल स्टार्ट फ्रॉम सेल्फ डेवलपमेंट टू सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट। जो एसडी की बात आती है कि हर गांव, हर घर खुशहाल बने, जब तक वो सेल्फ डेवलपमेंट नहीं शुरू होगा तब तक हम सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट को अचीव नहीं कर सकते। तो सेल्फ डेवलपमेंट के लिए जो गांव स्तर पर जो प्रभावी कार्यक्रम शुरू होने चाहिए, उसके लिए जिला स्तर के जो एनजीओस हैं उनको कैसे इस प्रोग्राम से जोड़ा जाए, उसका भी एक विंडो शुरू होना चाहिए। और मुझको लगता है कि भारत सरकार और जो स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स हैं, इन सबके साथ मिलके एसबीआई फाउंडेशन अगर उसमें बहुत एक कैटेलिटिक एक एजेंट के तरीके से आएगा, कैटेलिटिक कंट्रीब्यूटर के रूप में आएगा, तो मुझको लगता है कि जो नए भारत की कल्पना हमारे प्रधानमंत्री जी कर रहे हैं, खुशहाल भारत की कल्पना कर रहे हैं, हमारे यूथ के रिफॉर्म की बात करें, यूथ फॉर इंडिया का जो मूवमेंट चल रहा है, हमारे यूथ को बहुत बड़ा उससे बल मिलेगा, डायरेक्शन मिलेगी, जॉब मिलेगा और उनका नेशन बिल्डिंग में कंट्रीब्यूशन होगा। क्योंकि हम लोग इस बात में ज्यादा विश्वास रखते हैं, जैसा फाउंडेशन भी काम कर रहा है, कि हम थ्योरेटिकल पॉलिसी एंड प्लानिंग के साथ में प्रैक्टिकल जो इम्प्लीमेंटेशन है, जो हमारा बेनिफिशियरी है, लास्ट माइल पर्सन को हम जो मदद करने जा रहे हैं, उस मदद से उसके में क्या बदलाव हो रहा है, इसका हमको इसकी मैपिंग बहुत जरूरी है। हम लोगों की प्रेजेंस भी सारे देश में है, ब्लॉकों तक है, तहसील तक है, गांव तक हम लोग पहुंचने की कोशिश करते हैं। तो हम लोग आपस में मिलके कोई इस तरीके का हम लोग मॉड्यूल और स्ट्रक्चर तैयार करें कि हमारी प्रेजेंस देश के 6.5 लाख गांवों तक कैसे एसबीआई फाउंडेशन की प्रेजेंस पहुंचे, इसके लिए हम हर तरीके का कंट्रीब्यूशन देने के लिए तैयार हैं। क्योंकि ये नए भारत के निर्माण में नया एक ये मूवमेंट शुरू हो रहा है और ये मूवमेंट चले, इसका रिजल्ट देश के सामने आए, इसका रेप्लिका हम लोग दूसरे देशों तक पहुंचाएं, ये सबसे बड़ा हम लोगों के लिए एक अचीवमेंट होगा। और इसमें हम अपने सारे सहयोगियों के साथ में हर तरह से कंट्रीब्यूट करने के लिए तैयार हैं। जय हिंद।
Thank you, sir. Thank you. My next question then goes to Professor Joshi. Hi, Professor Joshi. I know we've spoken about the topic a lot, and I'd like to highlight two things that Mr. Badresh Mehra also kind of raised. One is the importance of kind of having the right skills as a volunteer.
Yeah.
And especially the other thing is getting a lot of women volunteers into our sector as well. We know that the government of India is doing skill employment for employment of youth for skill development of youth for employment. But how important as an educator do you think is skill employment for the social sector in particular, and what value will it bring to the entire space?
Thank you, Anirudh. Swami Vivekananda change the whole country. You can understand the power of youth. You know, he says only 10, he doesn't want 11, and he could change a country. And that's exactly what we have to do here in India. I'll give you a little context while I go into answering some of your questions. We have, I mean, as you know, we have the largest youth. If you just take the last 10 years statistics, the percentage of people living in India from 0 to 14 age has reduced over last 1 decade by about 5%. And the percentage of therefore presently living people from 15 to 64, and in that comes 15 to 29, and that is around 30%. And the number has gone up by 3.5%. You know, so in that case, there is a responsibility of the state and there is a responsibility of other stakeholders that are going to be there. Coming to SDGs, you know, I mean, Deepak ji and all, we all work for the Sustainable Development Goals. India alone has a burden of 50% of the burden of the global SDG targets. And if we have to have 30% youth working for it, and if we work for youth, then we are definitely going to meet the targets, and then the time has started tickling down. We are not more than 9 years to go to attain by 2030. Having said that, this is the background, but one more, when we must take an overall view of it. 2016, Commonwealth, I don't have the data of the later part. We have to wipe off 1 year last year. So 2016 Commonwealth, when we have the youth index, India is 133 out of 186 countries. Some of the neighboring countries are better than that. It means there is a huge amount of work required, and the government of India has rightly come in, whether from 2014 and 16 and later, whether it is about, the skilling part of it. We have NRLM for women, when we have the skills development, which has been given the largest emphasis to going about the startup, to trying to help education policy. New education policy has come in, so when you see a lot of work that government of India has done over last 6-7 years, where we are focusing on this 30% of youth, around 27 to 30% youth, which has been there between age 15 to 29. And we all need to work together. CSR has to work together, foundations have to work together, NGOs have to work together. And of course, we have to focus on women because they constitute about 50% of the thing. A lot of work is to be done. I went out to study this particular aspect during pandemic. You talked about skilling and reskilling. And there was a big issue in month of May last year, where we had a lot of people who were being skilled, and they were already enrolled into certain skilling programs, suddenly had to migrate to their villages. Now suddenly you would find that you can't do online. If it is motor repairing, you can't do online. You have to have some hands-on experience. And then if they are going to go there, and how long they will be there, till about December, we had absolutely no idea as to how long this is going to last and when the country is going to be out of this. So within that uncertainty, you have to talk about the future, and you can't think about the future otherwise. So a lot of research has been done, and there is a professor in UK, Simon Sinek, who has been talking about it for many, many years. It's not to do with only pandemic, but otherwise. One thing which I'm sure all the fellows who are there already on the panel and listening, they will all tell me that one thing that all of us want is to get the self-satisfaction. And when we work for others, we get a self-worth. You can write on the chat whether you agree with me. You definitely get the self-worth when you go and work for others. Another very important part that we have also seen over a decade, that we have a large number of people who are committing suicide. The suicide incidence amongst youth has gone up. And if that is to be countered, we have to have many more SBIs and many NGOs and many more people to come up and do the volunteering. It has been a myth. It has been a myth that we will volunteer only when we retire. We will have nothing else to do. But this is not true. You have proved through the foundation's work that a large number of youth is willing to this thing, and there is a reason for it. It's not only the mindset. It is also that if you see 40, 70 years of the work that has been done, economic development has gone up. We have been able to provide the youth a good amount of living standards, and therefore they are willing to go out and give their time to do this. So we all need to work together, put up a lot of structure around. There's a lot to do, youth to be involved in making things happen and all that. And we have to go out and, give them that meaningful work. And that's where, the skilling can be coming into practice, NRLM for women. And also, as we said, that the NGOs can take up this particular part of mapping, as our friend was talking about, that you need to put them into the right kind of work. If you don't give them the job which commensurates with their skills, they feel bored and they don't want to do it, and then they just get put off. So you need to, the that you have given is very, very important thing, ma'am. And then if they like what they do, and if it matches with their skills, and then they go out and do it. So when we do, a lot of educational institutions are doing programs. MBA schools have gone out to have that as a part of curriculum. We at SPGMI did it for more than 30 years, but other B schools have come up. But the point is that how do you sensitize? I'm doing a course with engineering students to sensitize them for social work. So this you have NSS, which has already been there. Can we have more activities connected with youth where you give them the experience which they have not had before? Many of my students have never gone out to see where their drivers live. I mean, when they go in and work in villages in a different context, how decisions are taken differently, their minds open up. And they are very fast to learn. They are brilliant, as all of you put out, the qualities of a youth. I don't want to repeat, but to be able to experiment and to innovate, these are the things that we need to, a lot to talk about on this particular topic, and all of us, we have to go work together. So as Abdul Kalam, late president, said that it is not the dream that you dream at night when you're asleep. It is the dream which does not allow you to sleep. And this is what my message is to all the youth fellows on the panel and listening to me, that please try and make that dream which passionately you can go out and contribute to the country. And we all look forward to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I could really feel the energy in terms of the various thoughts that you had. I feel like we need a separate 2-hour session just to hear you out and all the different data points that you have.
So much
on that note, and with the line that you use a lot, Shivaji, as a youth, somewhat, let's be honest, but as a youth, Professor Joshi kept using the phrases that there's a lot to do. Now, immediately the first thing that comes to my mind is there an unfair burden on one section of a society to kind of lead and make these changes, that the youth are only going to be the ones who are going to help us out. And as your experience, you've been a volunteer, then you've been a leader, youth leader of sorts through the YFI fellowship, and now you're an NGO professional leading your own set of initiatives. What message, when you look back, do you wish that you had as a young professional starting out in this journey, that have made this experience a little bit more worthwhile? You're on mute, Shivajit.
Thanks, Anirudh, for the question. And I would start with where it starts, somewhat youth, right? So it's been 10 years from where it started. It's the occasion right now. So I'm very glad that SBI has been able to very successfully put together a vibrant network of alumni, including yourself and so many others, including Priyavath here, Alex, Gokul. I can see so many names already on the conference itself. Now, you see, in 10 years, the context has changed a lot in terms of, and I really love it that SBI is rethinking even the topic of this particular discussion that we are talking about, goal-driven engagement of the youth, signifies that SBI now plans to do more than just an immersion program, right? So I think we are moving positively. To your very small question that is it a burden on one section of the generation? I don't think so, because we all, as somewhat youth people, should realize that we are here because one generation did take the burden before us. So we cannot not acknowledge that. We are just doing exactly what we should be doing. And it's not much. We are really asking us to do what is socially relevant, socially important, and socially productive for the future. So the burden is not there. But yes, of course, there are several things to look back upon. As I said, 10 years is an evolving experience, as it is for the fellowship, it is for myself. I've seen the sector closely from different organizations, different types of organizations, and as well as a network of diverse 300 fellows whom I have mentored, been with, or have been bosses of, etc., etc. Now, there are two parts of these kind of youth, right? When we talk about youth, I'll speak shortly about the youth who are what we mean by SBI Youth for India fellows, and they come for a program trying to figure out what their next steps would be in their career. I would say they do come from a space of privilege, a kind of economic privilege, a kind of career privilege, stability privilege, which allow them to experiment. And then there's this larger group of youth, which I also want to touch upon, where is the larger part of the country, like Deepakji pointed out, right? There is another huge youth segment which the fellowship is not designed to reach out to. So now let's start with this first youth, the kind that I belong to, right? And I look back on my journey, and I look back with a lot of these alumni that we have had, experiences that we have had. And there are 4 key areas that I would want to talk about. And this is a question in which I would like SBI Youth for India, Manjula ji, Priyavrat, everybody to think, as well as any youth who is probably thinking of this platform to think about. Youth represents innovation. What is innovation? The social sector is not new. It has been there for 40 years in India as an active regime. It has been there for hundreds of years before that, right? So when we go forward and all of a sudden start talking about our romantic ideas, I think one of our co-panelists started talking about it, romantic ideas of innovation, I think research, my own studying is very important. That requires me to study design, that requires me to understand the process of innovation. It's pretty much known today how innovation functions. Just by putting 2 + 2 together and claiming 5 doesn't make it innovation, right? And it might have happened before, people might have learned before, people who are sitting with your NGO might have known that before. So that's one key point I want everybody to dwell upon. Can the program be designed to promote innovation by aligning through the innovation process? And can fellows study themselves to make themselves more proficient to drive innovation? The next thing the second point that I would like to talk about is, are we commodifying doing good and feeling good? Are you here for, as I think Badriji mentioned, for compassion, or are you here for a clinical degree that is going to put you one step forward in your, I don't know, career journey? In 10 years, I see this to be a significant difference. When we started, there were hardly 4 main fellowships in the country, hardly anything rural. Today, there's, I think, more than 25 plus main fellowships in the country. So the commodifying of doing good, the commodifying of feeling good has started happening. And Youth for India should really try to steer away from that dimension. Empathy or compassion is very necessary for a young fellow. And empathy doesn't require you to do a fellowship. Empathy can start right where you are right now, right where you are with the people that you are. So I think judging that at every point in time, and from fellows' side, again, always being cautious, am I empathetic to my surrounding, not after coming to rural India, from the point where you're starting itself, is very, very important. The third bit that I would like to talk about is listening. Feedback from the generation that has been there before. This happens a lot in the sector. The sector has evolved. It has known charity in a way. It has then moved on to skill building. Now we are talking about self-development through entrepreneurship. The sector itself has learned a lot. The NGOs have themselves re-strategized, come to different new models. And it is no more, we don't have the luxury of time to just go forward and allow ourselves to dwell in thoughts that have already been done and tested out severally. So listening to what has happened before, reading them up, and being open to it is important. And the last question, last important point that I would really stress upon is whether you are, as a fellow, as a young person who is trying to do good and coming to a fellowship opportunity like this, are you coming here? Because I've heard that in a lot of conversations, the IT sector bashing, the corporate culture bashing. Now, at times to me, it looks like, very clearly and honestly, laziness. So my question would be very clearly, is a fellow coming here to escape work, or are you really coming here to find the work that you'd love to do? There's a very strong distinction here, and we would want the fellows of the latter kind. So, and any fellow who is listening should ask themselves that question. Are you really escaping that work? Are you thinking of becoming Elon Musk without doing anything to, push yourselves hard? Are you trying to become entitled without the effort? Or are you really trying to find your passion in this space? And with that, I would really want to talk about this group that, hey, if you're coming in here, please come here, as Ruqayya ji mentioned, please come here to find purpose, please find here to come self-worth. But I would just differentiate a little bit from what Ruqayya ji said. Please don't come here to find satisfaction. The more dissatisfied with you are with status quo, the better you would be. And the last bit of what I'd have to say regarding the bigger group, there is a lot to reach out to still, a lot more youth whom we need to work with. We need to make people understand a lot around finances, a lot around models, a lot around sustainability, and not a small privileged group, but a big, larger group. Such programmatic designs need not be the same as the fellowship design, but since we have journeyed 10 years with youth, and SBI is a large organization at the end of the day with a lot of youth connections, it is probably best placed to think in those lines. And I would really suggest that if we are going forward in such programs, it is not the burden on SBI alone. The way it should work is in the area of collaborations, creating an ecosystem of organizations that engages with that youth. I think many of the panelists have already kind of touched upon that. So with that idea, I think those are my reflections upon the last 10 years that I've journeyed from a fellow into something I still don't know yet.
And that's crucial, because that's where my next point is, the direction that I'd like to kind of add more depth on it or shine more light on is there then a need for the space to have youthful leaders, like young leaders who kind of learned through this experience, who are then responsible to guide other youth? Or are we still working on the traditional model of the ones who have a lot of cross-sector experience are the ones who are going to be our leaders? Do people like us, or do fellows like us who've graduated through the fellowship, should they be propelled to a position where they are responsible for decision-making attributes, so that then the youth themselves are leading their own? Is that a direction we then need to move towards?
It would be good if you direct your question to somebody.
I'm opening up this to everybody in the panel. So whoever wants to respond.
Can I come in?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So, my experience, I've been an academician and seen the youth over 4 decades, and I can see the variation of the same age over 4 decades that comes out to help a little. And I feel that, yes, today's youth needs to be involved in the decision making, and that is where the innovation will come. If you just do it as directed, it doesn't work. So one of the research says that, and how does it happen? It doesn't happen when you tell them what to do, but you tell them why you are doing what you are doing. If that kind of an understanding goes to the youth of why you are doing what you are doing, then they put their minds and try and see how it can be done well, and they try to see whether it can be further improved on that. So to my mind, yes, they should be involved in the decision making. And, people like all of you on the panel can be buddy. So all across the globe, even in corporate sector, mentoring is very high and very tall word, but even a buddy, like, somebody who has gone through this program and would like to, as Shubhajit said, that he's mentored in so many of them, but just a buddy helps. as to, do this, don't do this, or if you do this, this can happen. If you do that, that can happen.
Yeah. But
That-
ma'am, on that note, when you say that there is a possibility, one of the questions from the audience also kind of talks about how young people have a very limited voice in meetings, especially in large organizations. And that's a cause for conflict, because even if they do have ideas, maybe the way in which the social sector currently works is that these ideas don't necessarily get the right due. So with that sense of frustration, there is always going to be a frustration in any field that you work in, but especially if the importance that is given to who you are as a youth, but if your value is not taken into consideration and there's a age conflict, how do you necessarily deal with that considering the long-term objectives that we have to meet?
So I'll try to go forward and speak a little bit on the first point before I go on to the second one. In the first point, following up with what Rukayaji was saying, I think India survives on role model culture. We do investment banking, not because we understand what investment banking is. We do it because somebody else in my family did.
Yes.
So I think it's very important to, again, we do that in everywhere. What we eat, what we marry, or who we marry, sorry. And all of that we do by example of what has been done before. And I think thereby the fellowship model really works. It creates models of what people could be. We need much larger numbers. That's very true. So we need to create an ecosystem. One organization cannot drive it. The more such youth leaders or models, as you say, Anirudh, would come forward and create a trend, the more there would be people following the same channel. That's something which I believe. And then after a point in time, this could be as mainstream. I've already highlighted my concern around commodifying feeling good there, but at the end of the day, if you have to get people to think in a particular manner in a country which has role model culture, we definitely need to create role models. So I kind of agree with you that yes, we need to have. And the second part, when you're talking about, again, youth not being represented in meetings, there could be, there are different organizations here. I would let anybody else talk about it. But from a small perspective that I would really talk about is when people say that we are frustrated that we have not heard, I'll again bring in the point, have you heard the other side? When you go ahead and said, I would want to be represented in a decision-making space, have I skilled myself? And you see, that's the same thing. In a 30-year-old organization, if I walk in and say, I need to be heard right now, right here, I feel it's a little entitled. There has to be a journey there where you need to prove yourself in terms of an example, in terms of a small work, in terms of a showcasing, to be heard. That doesn't mean that youth doesn't lead to innovation. There's a lot of ideas that come in. Of course, our organization systems also need to become a lot more flexible to capture and harvest such ideas. But let's be very sure that harvesting innovation ideas and representation of youth in meetings are two very different things. Both very different systems. But I'd let anybody else with more experience with an organization.
Sorry. Joshua, would you like to add something? Yeah.
Is there anybody else answering? I want to just highlight 2 points. Ma'am, you want to say something?
No, you go ahead, Rukayaji.
So I want to say that there are, when we go, maybe in orientation that we do to this particular program, this particular aspect needs to be oriented of what Shubhajit and Anirudh are saying, because every innovation cannot be just planted in an organization. Because as he rightly said, the organization also has a history and a trajectory. It just cannot turn, the entire wind. Just because it may be good. And organizations take time to bring about the change. What happens is next year the youth will come, somebody else and will say completely different thing. You cannot keep on moving away. And therefore there are challenges, there are limitations of what organizations can do. And there the responsibility lies of the NGO, of communicating. Communicating what is possible, accepting what is possible, implementing right there what is possible, so that the youth feels that whatever we have said, they are being listened to, kind of a thing. But it is not a very easy task to do. Coming on the point which Sujit said, I want to differ a little bit about commoditization of the programs. I would want to believe, that even if sometimes people come in, with not a lot of clarity, escapism is a different thing. I don't want to dwell into that, but sometimes it has even helped, people, even if they have come for escapism, it has helped their depression to go, kind of a thing. And volunteering helps, even employee well-being when normal employees who are having very stressful work, when they go out and volunteer, their stress levels go down and their productivity at workplace goes up. The research shows that, and the same thing can happen to youth. My point that I want to make here is that I may be born with a silver spoon in the mouth, and I have never seen this. And even if it is a commoditization that has happened, when I go and see, something changes. I mean, I want to ask this question to all the fellows who are listening. What was that something that changed for you permanently? It is no going back. It's a one-way ticket, and it changes in you. So even if it is that where you make people go through the experience and the process by which the experience is made to go through, that decides as to what is the outcome, and the change that can happen in the youth.
Yeah. So now my question is actually to Manjula ma'am and Badrish sir. Like, we keep talking about youth, and it's a collective now, like it's a collective thing. And I feel like in this entire conversation, identity is being missed out of. The youth of our country are not a single collective. It's not like they speak the same language, have the same upbringing, the same lifestyle. There are so many nuanced contexts to who they are, the geographical region they belong to, the kind of socioeconomic profile that they are part of. So when we're talking about encouraging youth to start working towards a core national objective, we need to then come up with different policies and different implementation arms through which we start engaging with our youth. So what are your thoughts on that in terms of how we can start proceeding when we're talking about actual engagement and not just policy-based engagement where it's on paper? If we start talking about action plans, how do you think that this has to move forward?
Yeah. Is Badrish ji going ahead? Yeah.
Thank you, Manjula ji. Basically means I'm answering two questions at one time. One is the previous one. Should the youth be represented in the leadership? And I say definitely yes, and the role of the senior people is more transferring of the knowledge so that we don't keep on recreating the wheel. Once the wheel is made, they should move on to the next level. And I totally agree with what Suvajit has said, that people who are willing to listen and learn will grow. And the youth means they will learn the processes. Like if we took around 35 years journey as an organization, all that collective information can be transferred into a capsule, and the youth can be empowered in a really quick way for those decades of understanding the systems, the community, the needs, and what works and what doesn't work. I say the best thing about learning is the failures, because from the failures we learn, and we need to move on to the next level. And the desire, means if I understand Suvajit correctly, Suvajit mentioned that the satisfaction should not be there. There should be a zeal, the passion to create more and to move on to the next step. But it should not be random. It should be a gradual process. It should be with the learnings of the past and imbibing those learnings, learning from the failures of the earlier experiments, that we move forward. So those are the things, I think that's how the youth leadership has developed. From my personal experience, I was never restricted, even as a youth. Means my mentors and my seniors always promoted, if you are talking sense, everybody is willing to listen to you. So one should learn what things are required, what has been the earlier experience, and to take it forward. So that is on the first take on that. Should youth be represented? And as an organization and as an individual, I firmly believe, yes, youth, they are going to take it forward. They need to be representative, and they should have the collective information of earlier to take it forward. And looking at new scenario. Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, yes. Please go ahead.
Yes. So, Anirudh, like you mentioned, like how do we take it forward? And means, can you just give me a phrase on the question?
So my entire question was that we're talking about youth as a collective, but that's not necessarily true on ground. There are subgroups of youth who belong to different profiles. So how do we engage each subgroup differently?
Yes. So if people are different, every person's skills and their capacity and the willingness and the compassion levels are different. And so are the needs on the ground. Everybody cannot be a mechanical engineer and all should be fixing cars. We need other things also on the ground. So what fits in? That's why I say the role of the seniors of NGOs and organizations or CSR is to groom that and identify the right fit. Because if you are a good educationist, if you have passion for that, and we put and make you say mechanical engineer, you will not do good. So we need to put people who have the passion, and we have got examples where we have got a lot of engineers who have excelled in the development sector. And means I can safely say on this forum that in the development sector today, I think the contribution of the engineers is very significant. Most of the good work is being done by the engineers. So it's not that one sector. By education, we can be educated in a different sectors. I am a wildlifer. I have been trained in wildlife science, and I've been working in development sector now for almost past 25 years. So it's also what drives you, and do you find the right fit for your drive, and what grooms you. So that is what is important, and I think that should be taken forward. And I will let Manjula ji respond to the rest of the question.
Yeah. I too would like to respond to your earlier question. All of you have spoken about it, but one more thing what I would like to add is both the youth as well as the seniors, both of them have their own skill sets, right? You cannot, like Badrishji said, like it's years and years of experience and failures and learnings all put into a capsule. Now, each generation in the world has built upon the shoulders of the previous generation. That is why the development in all fields has been very fast in the last few years, because you are just getting the learnings, failures, experiences of the previous generations, and you're working on that. So the youth will have to take these learnings forward, and these seniors should also understand that the youth bring in their own skill sets, their own skill sets of energy, enthusiasm, what we are speaking about planet. So it is up to the organization to see that these skill sets are harnessed well and utilized for the betterment of all. So I don't think that any organization which is forward looking and wants to make a difference would help if they are help themselves if they are ignoring the youth and not giving them a voice in any kind of a meeting. So yeah, that's a win-win. And as regard what Badrishji also said, I endorse that. That, you know, there are different set of youth, you need to have different policies in place, and there is an urban, educated, highly talented and skilled youth, for which you need a different level of motivation and involvement of these set of youth in the national agenda. And you also have a larger segment of youth, what Shivajit was talking about, the not so privileged, who need to come up to the level of the other segment of youth. You need a different policy to bring them up and contribute equally and stand shoulder to shoulder along with the rest in the country's development. Yeah.
So Shivajit, on that point, and this is to Joshi ma'am as well, how much of this is an expectation battle? Like, if you are an urban educated / privileged youth, is there a higher expectation in terms of contributing? Or is that the same for somebody from a rural background? Or do they have the leeway to say, we want to improve our lifestyle and move forward, and everything else then becomes secondary? Or is that not true. Like, can you do both together and still at the same time achieve your national objectives that you set out? How does this work?
Okay, Aji, would you want to go forward or do you want?
Yeah, so I want to say that we have not done much study on this as yet. It has been more like a problem-solving approach that we have taken as yet. For example, in 2014, when we 13-14, World Bank came up and said that, okay, we will support you for rural women. And then we came up with a national rural livelihood mission. And then we had a kind of programs pertaining to that. So this particular aspect that urban and rural, what is the need and whether who is thinking what is the aspect, unfortunately hasn't been studied because we are still firefighting. We are trying to just put in our energy as it is required. Obviously, where there is no money, where there is a basic necessity hasn't been provided, there the need would be more about skilling, reskilling, upskilling, and that aspect would be much more there rather than go out and volunteer, because as it happens in the hierarchy, Maslow's hierarchy, when the basic needs are not satisfied, love and belongingness and contributing to other comes only at a later stage. And therefore, in that sense of the term, a greater responsibility comes onto the urban is very, very obvious.
Yeah.
So I'd like to add to that. Of course, I agree, probably there's less study around it. But over a period, I've been able to observe a lot many people who have the kind of career arcs like myself and my own journey, where if I look back, a lot of understanding on what being sustainable in your own personal practices mean. Like, for example, during growing up years, I had the opinion that I stay in old Calcutta building, heritage style building, and I would have broken that down and made it into flats just for my convenience. Today, with probably having a bit of an arc around, after having some level of economic sustainability, I go back and say, oh, this is heritage. So that realization has come from exposure. That realization has come from the ability to de-risk my professional career to an extent that my economic is kind of guaranteed by myself. So I think that's where youth need to go to. That is irrelevant of whether that's urban youth or rural youth. Now, in terms of one thing, like I see when I interact with a lot of young rural youth or tier youth who are from a lower economic privilege, I find, of course, there's this tremendous stress on, okay, how much can I economically achieve? What's the CTC I'm going to get? And nothing else, no other parameter. And whatever we are going to do, whatever awareness, that's not going to go away. You can do several MBA courses. They're not going to promote entrepreneurship. They are entering there thinking CTC in mind till that CTC be this thing. But the conversation around how you can go ahead and be socially responsible and yet keep your CTC is quite something which is attractive. People are not bad. They don't want to do bad. If there's a way to do good along with their own aspirations being met, they would do that. And there's a lot of things to talk about. There's multiplicity of skills which allows you to do lots of jobs. Creation of wealth, where our youth today still think job is the only way of creating wealth. But that's not true, actually. History doesn't say anything like that. Nobody did one job and became really rich ever in their lives. So there's a lot to think about. There's a lot to unpack. I don't think this is a platform where we can go ahead.
Yeah.
But the point that I'm trying to drive in is that we need to talk about how to maintain livelihoods or how to let people gain the livelihoods that they aspire for, and yet be socially responsible, instead of this being an either and or, a kind of a sacrifice that we talk about. So that's something which I wanted to add.
Manjula ma'am, Batishji, any thoughts to add on this?
I think they have summarized it well. Yeah, nothing more.
That's okay
Rishi?
with me. Yeah, they've
Yeah.
done it well. Yeah.
And so, throughout this, there's a common theme, like aspirations are there, passion is there, drive is there. And one of the other questions that also came up to me is, there's so many youth policies, so many other policies, and there's always action. Intent is always there, but action is always lacking. And today's world, if I can also say, there are so many topics. It's a fast moving world. I can read a topic today, completely forget about it tomorrow. And if I'm not satisfied with what I'm getting back in return from the main stakeholders of the system, I'm disillusioned very easily. I might be passionate about it again later on, but my engagement might be low. So as primary stakeholders of the system, what do we need to do so that we ensure that we are not disengaging with the youth? When we say that we're going to do something, we actually at least talk to them. Even if we have to highlight negatives, we still at least engage with them properly. So what are your thoughts on this?
Can I just add a very bombastic comment? Quick disillusionment is a mental health problem. If you can afford it, go and check a therapist.
I'm going to reach out to our psychologist there anyway soon. So yeah.
That's just humor. You can probably.
Yeah. What I think is policies are there. Okay, there are people with who have applied their mind, who have sat together, made the policy. Now it's for the executors to see that the policies are carried forward, right? And how do you ensure that? Only if there are checks on the way. Maybe after a year, after a couple of years, you check back and see, this is what my policy has been and where am I standing now? Does it need correction? Do I need to change it as per the changing times? That would definitely give a lot of credibility to the policies. We all of us are not saying that, you make a policy and then, it is written in cast in stone. But there has to be an effort to move in that direction, an effort to take it more seriously and see that we do keep changing over the years and keep what I would like, you'll have to disseminate what you have found, right? You need the checks that the reports or what you've done as a part of your facts that you collected, and that has to be made public. And that is when you will have the buy-in of more and more stakeholders into all your policies that are being made. Yeah. That is very important.
Yeah.
I would like to just add one point in the whole discussion is about how the curriculum must also involve a huge amount of soft skills. So this is an issue of soft skills, and whether it is in orientation or at the formal education level, when we focus on that, some of the values like perseverance, these are not patience. These are not something which have been incorporated. We have been only knowledge-based educational bombarding kind of a thing. I think as an educationalist, we will have to think differently and add those aspects for the youth.
I would also like to, especially because Manjula ma'am brought up the point itself that of accountability, right? And frameworks which kind of tracks and bringing back the youth linkage to SDGs, the topic that we're talking about. If let's say, for example, there are clear matrices that allow people to see, or trackers which allow people to see how much they have been able to drive ourselves towards those goals. And again, if these accounting standards or frameworks are reliable, then that might drive it. Just a thought, it might drive consciousness, just like it does as a social repute thing, like a social score kind of a concept.
Anirudh, I would like to basically mention here that means the youth policy has been there since 2014. And it's high time that we also look at the accountability and what have we achieved, because now we are talking about SDGs and earlier we were talking about Millennium Development Goals. So how much were we able to achieve the Millennium Development Goals, or are we just jumping from one branch to another, which without achieving anything for the previous ones. So rather than making them jargons, we should make them more practical. Like you mentioned, the intent is good, but I think action is much better, and which is the slogan there. And that is the right kind of thing which needs to be captured. Things needs to be translated into actions. We are still struggling with a lot of database. I think with the new generations, the MIS systems which are being developed, we keep on talking about data and saying in lack of data, we can't take decisions, but certain decisions, and how long can we wait for that data? Or how long can we wait for those research to be conducted? It's not like a PhD thesis, like we have to wait 5 or 7 years and then arrive at a decision. If somebody is in need today, we don't wait for that much time. And during COVID, means we didn't even wait for all those tests and came up with a vaccine. So means that is the need of the hour. And with the communities, are we saying, means are the local communities or the remote communities are the experimental lot, and they will last for, means unless we have done all our research and have found out all the solutions. So I think certain actions needs to be taken now. There will be short-term actions, there will be long-term actions. And certain things might be wrong today or might be wrong earlier, which means it's also the time factor in which time it is being done. If somebody needs food today, you can't wait for, means to experiment what is his nutrition need, means prepare for that, raise funds for that, and then come up with the best nutrition package by the time that person is dead. So we need to at least keep those things alive to make it happen. That's why I say, like, policies are happening, but those need to be translated on the ground. A robust database needs to be created. Accountability factor needs to be improved significantly. Means let it be the government sector, private sector, or the CSR sector, because a lot of things also get driven by the policies and the jargons. So we need to also keep a track that in which direction are we trying to move, what are we trying to achieve. These things like SDGs or the Millennium Development Goals all are targeted towards the same goals. It's only the way, the pathways which we are taking are different. But are we on the right course, and what solutions we have found and what work best? That's why it means we say that any learning experience, the best example, the case studies needs to be disseminated more. More and more people will come to know about that. They will try, do it in their sectors. So the replication and the multiplication factor also plays a major role. We have found solutions to certain problems, but we are not able to take them to scale to the larger audience. That's what needs to be done, means in terms of the policies and actions. So that's what I wanted to say about that.
Yeah, so but like we had discussed previously when we were talking about the session, you had said something that NGOs were born as an alternative form of governance to give the delivery of certain systems where the government couldn't reach people. Now, in this large topic, if to achieve national objectives, so the government of India is not talking to our youth in terms of how much it's achieving, and then the youth have to form parallel systems. So is there always going to be the case where we're not going to be in partnership with one of our major institutions in terms of how we achieve certain national goals or social policies? Is there no way in which organizations can come together to make it more inclusive in terms of our approach?
Personally,
Can
so Vijit, you want to intervene? Or?
Go ahead.
Please go ahead.
Okay. So basically, I would like to say that means as an NGOs came into existence to fill in the gaps, wherever there were gaps in actions. So the NGOs took on those onus and they tried to fill in those gaps. Also, where they felt there was need to do more, they flagged the issues. And means initially NGOs were perceived as activist group. So, and now means it's more inclusive and more development sector people are contributing, just not flagging, because earlier it was more agitations and things like that. Now it is converting those things into actions and creating examples. If you see, means by and large globally, there have been certain case studies, people have found solutions, and it has come mostly from outside the government. And wherever the government felt there is some good in it, some positive, they have adopted that system and tried to replicate, because government has the mechanism, machinery, and the resources to replicate it at large scale. So the onus on the NGOs and means on the civil society is to promote the good examples and to disseminate that. So that's what I feel about.
Yeah. Shivaji?
I'd also like to add on in terms of, I'll try to bring the attention to our mindset also. The thing is, the way our education particularly works, it kinds of delineates our career goals, how it should be, as something which is oriented towards personal achievements probably. And the way it has been is you never really think about, I mean, many people don't really think about how you can align with governance. So in our mindset itself, from our formative years, the government is another, and private sector is another, and then there are these buckets formed. And if I look at how education has been from what, let's say, the Gandhi inspired self-governance rural model to what we see happening in rural spaces, in urban spaces today, where a child growing up in a gated community hardly engages in any kind of administration, any kind of social networking, any kind of alignment with what is going around, even in the areas of SDGs. As Badriji mentioned, certain bits are clear solutions that we know and can be really operated at a community level also. But children or youth don't grow up engaging in them. We are not worried about where our garbage is going. We are not worried about how women are treated in our building. It seems like, that's not my job. My job is to grow in my career, right? And this delineation from the beginning creates a delineation at the end. So I think education, at least for
Sorry, Shivaji seemed to have lost you for a second.
The kind which really promotes stewardship of any kind of goals, be it SDGs or any kind of sustainable involvement. If we can do that, am I audible right now?
I mean,
audible right
now you are. Yeah.
No. I think you can move forward and we can go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll reconnect.
Joshi ma'am, your thoughts on this, like how Shivaji raised the importance of education?
Yes, so I want to tell you that as far as the Millennium Development Goals till 2015, it was a failure, and the world realized it very well, and they were absolutely upfront on this, and that is where the Sustainable Development Goals have come. Earlier, it was only supposed to be for certain countries, and now they said that leaving no one behind, every country is involved. And I am really, really happy and amazed partially is the level of energy that you see at the international level. You just go through and see how many forums are working on that at the international level, including youth and children, where we are trying to inculcate the personal consciousness amongst the children. How do I save on water? How do I use less plastic? I mean, small things. How do I use the road safety norms? How do I go out and do various other aspects as an individual child? I mean, child, not youth, I'm talking about. And then we come to the youth. Of course, we have a lot of role to play in trying to make it happen. And particularly SDG 5, when we are talking about women empowerment. And what we are trying to put up that with the government now, if that the SDG goals are to be achieved, I'm not taking the last two, 16 and 17. I'm talking about the even 13, 14 underwater and all that, if you just leave out. The major SDGs where India is supposed to work very heavily, our approach to the government has been that for every SDG, whatever funds that you allocate, whatever targets are to be attended, make sure that 50% of that benefit reaches to women. The moment we do that, underlining that for every SDG goals, your SDG target of 5 will be attended, which is about gender equity and, women empowerment and things like that. No matter what you are doing, whether it is workplace or you're talking about health or you're talking about education, or no matter what you're talking about, you bring whatever the budget, 50% of that, the benefit must go to women. Once if the government starts implementing that as a part of reporting from the implementing departments of the government, I think some correction would happen.
Sure.
And at the national level and more so at an international level, we are working extremely well on this. I mean, it's just not like that, that one of the Indians youth gets the award for SDG 2, Stop Hunger, and he involves Gopinath. He involves 12,000 youth members to try to part. So he's youth and involves youth in making that change for the SDG number 2. Because if
Makes sense.
Stop Hunger is the first requirement, then that has to be worked on.
Yeah. But and these are good stories. And there is always, as a social sector professional, my takeaway has always been that even if I want to look for a negative story, I will find 10 positive stories out there. But now if I'm looking from a data standpoint, like Mr. Badrishji raised, how important data is to share and validate the work that you're doing. If I'm cynical in my approach as a youth and I say, okay, show me what the figures are. Has poverty reduced by 5 metric points? Has any other SDG goal been achieved by 10 metric points? And while the action plans talk about these detailed databases, it talks about MIS systems, it talks about reporting every 2 years, and you don't see this progress. What roles do premier stakeholders, like including SBI Foundation, Manjula ma'am, need to play as, I would say, the go-between between our establishments and our youth, so that the engagement and the encouragement is always consistent from now on?
When you're talking about we should go back to our earlier question, right? When we talked about policy, there's also a question of accountability. So your data points are very important. And like we already discussed, it does not mean that, you lay a policy and we have to achieve. This is not a business. And at the end of the year, you have to make this much profit. And that is when you are counted as successful. Is the effort there? Is the effort there? Are we in the right direction? Are we getting there? If not today, you can't just say that I'm going to reach so-and-so goal by the year 2030. So each year I break it up by 10. And then so each year I have to do by 10 by 10 each year. And so that's how
makes sense.
This is not a business metric, right? So what the fact check that we need to do is whether we are going in the right direction, whether we are going to go there, and if not today, we are going to achieve it in the planned direction. Yeah, that would be my takeaway from here.
Shivji, your thoughts on this?
I think in terms of the data bit, I look at it. There are two sides. One, I never believe that visionary leadership should completely look at data and data only. There's a lot that is in between the lines in data, and any visionary leader can see through where a particular program or a particular intervention is going towards. With the data giving the signals, not necessarily all the information. So that bit has to be preserved. That's one part. And the second thing, in terms of data and data itself, I look at it very positively and in the future, because I see gradually, and it's going to be a long journey for India, but as we are moving forward, we are intensively embracing technology, and technology is making very great strides in becoming very human-centered, very integrated in how we, express information. Like I'll take a very quick example. Mental health data is something which is presently almost unavailable if you really go about looking into how we have our history, right? If you go to schools or if you go to workspaces. But the level in which we are engaging in social media all across the board right now, maybe 5 years down the line, a particular coordinator or an inspector in a particular community would be able to sit and have a thermal map of how people are feeling in their community and preempt any domestic violence case. We are not far away from that world, right? In India, we have a lot of steps to happen. We of course need the entire technology to reach people, to penetrate. People need to get comfortable with, be able to navigate it. So we are probably looking at 10, 15 years, not 5. But at the end of the day, it will happen. And so today, the sector, the development sector, the way it is, where data is a huge concern, or rather validity of data is a huge concern, is gonna get cleaner and cleaner as we go through time, right? So I'm very positive with this integration of technology, how we will probably able to, look at the accountability a lot more seamlessly than we are doing, where we need to do studies separately. Studies last 5 years, whatever. But in the future, I see all of this becoming quite seamless and possible.
Yeah. Joshi ma'am, Badrish sir, any thoughts on this? I know you've already given your thoughts, Badrish ji. I think Joshi ma'am.
So I would like to go. I want to say that as a B school professor, we rely so much on data, and we feel that there is a need for doing that. So both qualitative and quantitative aspects do matter, but that's what exactly has been done for SDGs. For some of the people, it may just help to say that it is not goals, there are targets. And these are not for one country. It is kept in mind all countries of the world. But that's not enough. We are talking about the measurement, and that measurement is very important. For example, India has done extremely well on the maternal mortality rate. It has gone down. You can indicate what was there 10 years ago and what is it now. But in case of stunting, unfortunately, the latest reports are that post-pandemic, stunting has increased in certain part of the country. And if that is the case, you will have to work on it. And therefore, to that extent, data comes handy for you. Otherwise, you continue to believe that you've done a good job. Maybe you've done a good job, but you also need the data points to try and do. And if you don't do that, it is like bringing the whole world up to a particular level by 31st March 2030. So it will be a data driven to that extent, So I'm for the data.
Badrish ji, any thoughts that you would like to add?
Yeah, but just means a small thought, and I agree with Suvijit that data is an indication. It basically gives you an indication that in which direction we are going. Because being a student of statistics, I can say it means you can manipulate with statistics, and it is not the very truth picture.
Yeah.
Because because many times we just go by the numeric values. And if you say that 1 crore people will have food, so which are these 1 crore people? So those matters, because statistics don't give you the complete picture. It just gives you the picture you want to achieve. And many times that's what is the reality, because how you put in the data, that's what the results it is going to give. And that's why I lay a lot of emphasis on the study design. How it is designed. So unless it is designed in an appropriate way, it will always give you wrong data. It's like garbage in, garbage out. So we should not totally be driven with data, but what we have been able to achieve, we should be able to record. Like with MIS system, when I say that we should be able to record whatever achievements we have done, and it will indicate that are we on the right track or are we going off the track. So that's what it adds the value in terms of the database and the MIS. And certainly, yes, for decision making and policy development, you need that kind of information because you have to take educated decisions. So for that, we need some sort of information. So that's what I wanted to say.
I'd also want to add on quickly, Anirudh, because Badriji sparked a thought. In the discussion that we are talking about data, we are talking about data as an indication of our performance, which means we are talking about management information data. But data in the social sector, in the development sector, is heavily used to communicate externally also.
Yes.
And I see that that as a that's almost like a competition. It's like as bad as a competition as in the in a product space, where you go forward talking about somebody saving 10,000 liters off and somebody going 20,000.
That's actually very interesting. Yeah, that's actually very interesting that you bring it up, because my last point of conversation, and this is something that I was highlighting to me in the report, in National Youth Policy reports. It talks about how the social sector space is one of the most fragmented spaces in India, and that organizations don't collaborate with each other, which raises to me a very interesting point, is that cross-sector conversations and cross-sector impact is often understated in our day-to-day conversations. I might be a strong believer in waste management, but I don't understand the relationships in terms of how animal welfare, general poverty, health are all related to the topic and the cause I believe in. So how do we start empowering our youth to understand cross-sector impact and its importance in achieving our SDG goals, so that they're not connected? All 17 goals are intertwined with each other. Maybe Shivaji, we start with you.
Yeah, in the same lines, I would take on the part when you're talking about cross-sector impact. I mean, the first part I have anyway talked about. I think from understanding the concept of sustainable development goals beyond just goals as concepts, like what are we talking about water sustainability, what are we talking about education equality for all, and all of the climate action, all of them. Right now, understanding them is important. Getting them into education such that young adults can engage in action around them is important. But the other thing that I was talking about, just in linkage with your question, was a unifying standard is important. So the other two are what youth receives, but the third thing we probably need from a government or from an association of NGOs and CSOs sort of thing, where we can account ourselves in a gold standard, saying, okay, if you're talking about water sustainability, this, if I'm an NGO doing a particular intervention, I try to, my language of impact should be the same, and my assessment standards and survey design and study design, as Badriji mentioned, should be having certain standards mentioned. Similarly, another organization should. It's how a scientific community maintains a uniform standard.
Yeah.
CSOs to do the same also, I believe.
Yeah. Manjula, ma'am?
Yeah, there is a lot of involvement even in the corporate sector on the sustainability factor right now. Like Shivaji pointed out, almost all organizations have a sustainability officer in the company itself. Yeah. So this would marry most of the goals into the way business is being done, sir. And having said that, I think like Badriji pointed out, the CSR sector itself is fairly new as compared to most other sectors in the country.
Yeah.
So the way that we have been operating is also in silos. I agree with you there. So we need to engage in more and more platforms like this, talk to each other, understand what the other people are, because every organization does not work in all the fields, right? So each of them have their own specialty. So we need to talk to each other and find out how is it that we can incorporate the other goals, because finally all of us want the same thing. That we need to ensure that our country reaches somewhere after by 2030. So we need to talk to each other and engage with each other. And for youth, I would say learning doesn't stop anytime. there comes to no point in anyone's life, in fact, that you say that I know it all. Look at me, I've been a career banker and I'm here today talking to experts like you. And I had to learn and reinvent myself totally. So learning doesn't stop. So we need to learn, engage, collaborate all the time. And the Wi-Fi program itself is designed that way, that we collaborate with the NGOs, find out what is their own specialization, try to marry the aspirations of the fellows with the goals of the NGO and their speciality. So that itself is a huge collaboration for us, a huge learning point. So every time in the foundation, we try to get into newer projects so that we learn, and then we can incorporate into our other programs. So there has synergy between whatever we do ourselves.
Thank you, ma'am. Joshi ma'am, your thoughts on the cross-sector relationships and its importance?
Absolutely. I mean, any amount is less said because all of them have rightly pointed out. And we can't, I mean, this has been a problem and really we have a long way to go. We work in silo, we don't collaborate, we have our own individual style of implementation. And growth becomes an issue. You know, today we are in the age where we definitely go out and grow in size. We can't continue to be only a drop in ocean for 40, 50 years, you know, kind of a thing. I did this study of so many NGOs in 2010. And when we went out to study those organizations, those NGOs, which learned from the corporate sector, whatever changes were happening in corporate sector, when they were early and they adopted the change, those were the ones who not only survived but went out to reach a particular level. And those who did not change, you know, either closed down or continued to be doing what, because they said that chal raha hai, chalne do kind of an attitude. So this is a major, major painful part of the development sector. We need to change. The faster we do, some changes are happening in terms of measurement scales. Social return on investment is a new tool which is becoming very popular, and government is now coming up with the, immediately come April, and then as ma'am was suggesting in CSR, the implementing parties will have to do certain kind of demonstration. So all this, we hope sooner changes come.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Padrishji, you think it's a fair assessment to say that NGOs don't collaborate? Is it really that easy to collaborate with some NGO and some other state who maybe don't even agree with your objectives or the way you work, even if you're working in the same area?
Yeah. Coming to your question, Anirudh, basically I was smiling to myself when you're asking that, because I think it's much more relevant in the NGO sector, the cross-sector linkages, I would say, and the learning and sharing of it. Because we are not in business sector. I'll give you an example. Like in 2006 and all, we started the process and basically initiated the spring shed management process. And earlier we were working on a watershed approach, and then we found that it was still not giving the desired results. So then we reached out to some technical institutions and all, and developed a methodology for reviving the springs. And from 2006, and then we implementing some projects and all. It took us almost a decade. In 2018, it means the government accepted it, and it is being now replicated across the country. We initially developed it only for the Himalayas, but now since the Eastern Ghats and the Western Ghats also have that kind of terrain, it's being replicated there. Because we shared that information. If you are a business sector, maybe the first thought would have been to patent it and to make money out of it. So that was not the intention. We are working for the community. Anything which works for and which benefits the community, we are willing to share that with anybody. And that should be the goal for any NGO or any sector which is working for the social good. So that is what I would say emphasis, that collaboration is the key. We are part of this Spring Initiative partners across the country. So we are part of the water network. So that is very essential. And we are sharing information without we are not holding back. Cross learnings are happening. People are coming, learning. We are sharing it with the corporates. We are sharing it with the CSRs, and a lot of CSR is supporting us in that. So the willingness is to support is also increasing. And nowadays, more collaboration where we say that means how other fundings are also being, joint fundings are being done. So that is increasing over time.
Yeah.
So I think the willingness, if we see, we are moving in a positive direction as a country also, that people are willing, and thanks to the social media and the digital network, that nothing is happening in isolation. Everybody is aware about everything. If you want to know about something, you just Google it and you can find about that. And that's the beauty of it, that how we tend to use that medium, it's up to you. So if you are honest enough and your intentions are clear, that's why I said, even for a volunteer or a fellow, means the intentions, the commitment, and the compassion, that is the key which drives this whole thing. And through this SBI Youth, I think that is what it is pushing. And it's one of the best examples. I think this, like Manjula ji also said, they're also willing to share it with other organizations which feel that this kind of fellowship programs needs to be done, because it's very well structured. A process has been developed. So that can be replicated and it will be very helpful for the others. So that is, I think, the beauty of all the collaboration and sharing information, which brings us together. And again, coming to my previous thing about data, we should not be working on the averages, because averages don't help. We usually with statistics, we end up taking the mean values and things like that. Mean values won't help, because working in the remote areas in the Himalayas, the density is not high. If we say per capita, what is the gain? No CSR is going to support anything in the remote areas. You'll end up supporting more things in the urban spaces. Basically, we are tending to promote cities and to create more garbage, I would say, than to create more cleaner and more socially acceptable. Because during the COVID, everybody wanted to go out, because in the cities, you're just looking at your walls or walls of the front, your neighbor. So that is the beauty of it, that you need to also create spaces, open spaces, and open spaces, you won't get that much density. So rather than working on the density or per capita kind of thing, you should also see where the need is and what kind of need is there in those areas. So that is what I like to emphasize here.
I really like to thank everybody for the time and for all the comments that you've given us today. I mean, I really appreciate it, especially Mr. Badrishi's last points on how the fellowship is the right medium based on all the points that we've raised, and as the right platform for fellows to kind of leverage the relationships that they are building and really focus on cross-sector impact. So it's a learning experience for them and also for the organizations that they belong to. So I'm hoping that the current 100 fellows are really able to take something out of this conversation and think a little bit more in terms of the projects that they're doing, so that there's more collaboration on field. And on that note, I invite now all the panelists to kind of share some message, that if they have any message to share for our fellows, especially from a perspective of what you would like them to know about how the youth and then themselves being youth can participate in the long term for us to achieve our objectives. So I'll give you guys the floor and then we can close the session.
If I should start first, I would say,
please.
My message to the youth, both to the alumni as well as the current fellows, is believe in yourself, believe in your power, believe in your talent, and believe in your intention to do good. Okay, that is important. Have a lot of empathy, like what Shobhajit pointed out. Empathy is very important. So good luck to all of you, and continue to make this sector more vibrant so that more people join.
Thank you, ma'am. Hushi, ma'am, would you like to share your thoughts?
Yes, so of course, first of all, I want to congratulate all the fellows that you have, I mean, whatever reasons, but you have gone out to do the fellowship. My point is that you continue to be contributing in some form or the other. So some of you may have gone back to the corporate sector, and it is perfectly fine, because we believe that you need not necessarily stay in the development sector, then only you can contribute. Even if you become a socially sensitive manager, then also you are contributing to the society. This is where, you know, these sachet of shampoos have come in, because somebody went out to see that the small houses cannot buy the 200 ml bottle, and that's how, you know, this 1 rupee, 2 rupees, and business has completely changed. And therefore a social sensitivity that you have taken through the fellowship is going to help you throughout your life, for which, you know, you need to continue to be in some form. How you discover that for yourself, continue to be connecting and all that. And as I see, a lot of people have been the mentors, so be buddies with the new batches which come up, you know, and one-to-one, if you just help them, and that is the way forward is, do whatever you do in a larger perspective, as Gandhiji said, unto this last, till the last person gets the benefit. You continue to be working for that, and that is the way forward. We have, my generation has a lot of hope for you to do, and pandemic has made it more difficult, and therefore you carry a larger burden on your shoulder in immediate future to work on that. Wishing you all the very best. Thank you.
Badrishji, would you like to share your thoughts?
First of all, I would like to congratulate the SBI Youth Fellowship for completing 10 years and wishing many more centuries, I would say. So, and to the fellows, I would say that they are doing amazing work, because they don't even realize what kind of different kind of impact they have been able to make in the rural communities and the far off areas, even in urban centers, if they're ever placed there. So they have made it significant contribution, and collectively and sharing it among themselves also would take it much more forward. And as an organization, I would say, we greet them with open arms, and we are willing to share all our experience and transfer all the knowledge and the skills we have gained over the years with them. So they're most welcome, even if they want to visit this area, see what the kind of work we do, and also see work of others. We also would like to learn more from them. Basically, they also bring in so much fresh perspective. So it's a win-win situation, I would say, this fellowship. The NGOs learn a lot. The fellows gain new skills. They get a connect, because I feel, apart from connection, compassion and all, the connect is also very important. So they do get a connect, because sometimes due to the geographies or the upbringing, or because they're born in urban area, it is not their fault, because their willingness to work in rural areas, that is quite appreciable, and we really value that. And I wish this program very all success, and really appreciate the work the fellows have been doing. And also I would say the alumni which is there, they have contributed so much, because they are the flag bearers still. And now basically the fellows being graduated and being sitting in some key positions, they can take it much more to the wider circle. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those kind words. Shivaji?
Yeah, thanks, Anirudh.
Back to program manager mode.
Yeah, I'm pretty much speaking as an alumni here, and I think it's one of the proudest moments, as I shared, that the fellowship is, SBI has been able to take this fellowship for a decade now, and so many people now form the alumnus, and they are from junior to top management of different organizations, and many have organizations of themselves, which means the kind of impact that it is generating and can generate is great. So proud of everyone around it. To incumbent fellows, you're joining a big family, which is definitely going to get bigger and bigger. At the end of the day, synthesizing what Ruqayya ji, Manjula ji, and many of the other panelists already said, that empathy is important, whatever you do, wherever, in a corporate, quote unquote, in a social enterprise, wherever, whichever level you are, or even if you're at home, be empathetic. Always think in your action and in your speech and whatever decision you're going to take, how is it going to impact the other, how the other person is feeling, every effort to put yourselves in another person's shoes. Just like I'm borrowing a very popular quote, if at any point in time, if you have a choice of being right and being kind, be kind.
Thank you. Thank you. On that note, I'd like to thank.
Just to say, Suvijit, being kind is always right.
Thank you.
And on that note, I'd like to thank the panelists once again for giving us their time. And I hope as a moderator, I've done justice to the topic at hand. And I genuinely thank Priyavat especially for allowing me the opportunity to do this. To the fellows, current fellows, I look forward to seeing you on the other side as alumni, so that we can listen to your stories and know what's going on, and to see you guys being leaders, just like we were, for the next batch coming in. And on that note, wish you all, everybody, the best of luck, and especially good mental health in these troubling times. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Anirudh, and thank you,
Opportunity.
and Shivaji. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining in.
Thank you.
So we will now be concluding the panel discussion, and we will be resuming with the conclave proceedings at 2 p.m. with the pitch desk happening at 2 p.m., which will be the initiative called YFI Sahyog. And I would also once again like to thank all the panelists and the moderators for taking the time to make this happen and for sharing your best wishes for the platform. And I'd like to also share that this discussion has offered us critical insights and perspectives, which we hope to take into consideration as we go on to pursue meaningful careers in the social sector. Thank you all once again, ma'am. We will now be resuming the conclave at 2 p.m. And in the meantime, the lounge section will be open for all our alumni and current fellows to network with each other. Thank you for joining, and see you all at 2.